When pressure rises, most people lose control. Their breath shortens, their mind scatters, and their decisions become weak. But what if pressure didn't break you? What if it revealed your strength in moments of pressure? Your true level of self-mastery is exposed. Life will test you through stress, conflict, and uncertainty. This message will teach you how to remain calm when everything feels intense, how to slow the mind, and how to make clear decisions even when the weight is heavy. Calm is not weakness. Calm is power. Pressure enters your life without asking permission. It arrives in moments when expectations rise, when time feels short, when responsibility feels heavy, and when the outcome seems important. Most people immediately label this experience as something negative. They say pressure is bad, pressure is harmful, pressure ruins peace. But this belief is the first mistake. Pressure is not your enemy. Pressure is a mirror. It does not change who you are. It reveals who you have trained yourself to be. When pressure appears, it exposes the quality of your inner world. If the mind is scattered, pressure will scatter it further. If the mind is undisciplined, pressure will make that weakness visible. But if the mind is calm, grounded, and trained, pressure becomes fuel rather than fire. This is why two people can face the same situation and respond completely differently. The situation is not the deciding factor. The state of the mind is. Pressure is often misunderstood because people expect life to be comfortable. They expect smooth paths, predictable outcomes, and constant control. But life does not grow anything valuable without resistance. Muscles grow through resistance. Skills grow through difficulty. Character grows through challenge. Pressure is the weight that life places on you to see whether you will collapse, complain, or rise with awareness. The moment pressure appears, the untrained mind tries to escape. It looks for distractions. It looks for blame. It looks for shortcuts. It reacts emotionally and calls it urgency. But reaction is not strength. Reaction is habit. And habits formed in chaos will only create more chaos. Pressure does not demand reaction. It demands presence. When pressure increases, the body responds first. The breath becomes shallow. The shoulders tighten. The jaw clenches. The heartbeat accelerates. These are signals, not commands. But most people mistake signals for orders. They allow the body's stress response to hijack the mind. Once this happens, decisions are no longer conscious. They are automatic, emotional, and often regrettable. To see pressure as a test rather than an enemy, you must change how you relate to discomfort. Discomfort is not danger. It is information. It is feedback telling you where your limits currently are. When you feel pressure, instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this?" ask, "What is this teaching me about myself?" This single shift transforms pressure into a teacher. Pressure tests patience. It tests clarity. It tests self-control. It tests whether you can remain still while everything urges you to rush. The world praises speed, but wisdom lives in timing. Under pressure, speed without clarity leads to mistakes. Calm does not slow you down. It prevents you from going in the wrong direction. Many people believe that calmness under pressure means suppressing emotion. This is another misunderstanding. Calmness is not suppression. It is regulation. You acknowledge what you feel without letting it control you. You notice fear without becoming fearful. You notice urgency without becoming reckless. This is inner leadership. Pressure also tests identity. When outcomes matter, people attach their self-worth to results. If they succeed, they feel worthy. If they fail, they feel broken. This attachment increases pressure and weakens decision-making. When your identity is tied to outcomes, fear enters every choice. But when your identity is rooted in effort, discipline, and integrity, pressure loses its power over you. A person who understands pressure does not ask life to become easier. They ask themselves to become stronger. Stronger does not mean harder or colder. It means clearer. It means more stable. It means less reactive. Strength is the ability to remain centered while forces pull you in different directions. Pressure often comes with noise. Opinions, expectations, deadlines, and comparisons create mental clutter. The test is whether you can hear your own awareness beneath the noise. Those who fail this test Start living according to external demands rather than internal values. Those who pass learn to act from principle even when pressure is high. One of the greatest dangers under pressure is urgency. Urgency creates the illusion that something must be done immediately or everything will collapse. This illusion steals wisdom. Very few decisions in life require panic. Most require clarity. When pressure says now, wisdom asks why. Slowing down internally, even if you act quickly externally, is the mark of mastery. Pressure also reveals whether you trust your preparation. Those who avoid discipline in calm times suffer during intense times. Those who train consistently find stability when it matters most. Pressure does not give you new abilities, it reveals the ones you have already built. That is why daily habits matter more than rare moments of motivation. There is also humility in pressure. It reminds you that you are not in complete control of outcomes. You control effort, intention, and response. Everything else unfolds beyond you. Accepting this truth reduces unnecessary tension. Fighting reality increases pressure. Aligning with reality builds peace. When you treat pressure as an enemy, you waste energy resisting what already exists. Resistance tightens the mind and narrows perception. When you treat pressure as a test, you become curious. Curiosity opens the mind. An open mind sees options. Options lead to better decisions. Pressure is not personal. It does not target you because you are weak. It comes because you are alive, growing, and involved in meaningful effort. Avoiding pressure means avoiding responsibility. Avoiding responsibility means avoiding growth. A life without pressure may feel safe, but it will remain small. Every moment of pressure asks a simple question: will you be ruled by impulse or guided by awareness? The answer is not spoken. It is shown through your breath, your posture, your tone, and your choices. Over time, these small responses shape your character. When pressure hits, you always have a choice, even if it does not feel like it. You can choose to pause. You can choose to breathe. You can choose to observe before acting. These choices are subtle, but they are powerful. They turn pressure into a proving ground rather than a battlefield. Those who learn to stay calm under pressure do not eliminate difficulty from life. They eliminate unnecessary suffering. Difficulty will always exist. Suffering is what happens when the mind fights what is already happening. Calm acceptance combined with disciplined action is the path through pressure. Pressure sharpens awareness when met correctly. Just as heat refines metal, pressure refines the mind. But refinement only happens when you allow the process instead of resisting it. Running from pressure weakens you. Facing it with awareness strengthens you. In moments of pressure, remember this: you are not being attacked. You are being tested. Tested to see whether you will act unconsciously or consciously. Tested to see whether you will react or respond. Tested to see whether you will abandon your principles or embody them. Over time, as you pass these tests, something changes. Pressure no longer feels threatening. It feels familiar. You recognize the sensations, the mental patterns, the urge to rush. And because you recognize them, they no longer control you. Familiarity breeds steadiness. The greatest advantage of seeing pressure as a test is that it gives meaning to difficulty. Meaning transforms endurance into strength. Without meaning, pressure feels pointless and cruel. With meaning, it becomes purposeful and refining. A calm mind under pressure does not mean the absence of fear. It means fear is no longer in the driver's seat. The mind acknowledges fear and still chooses wisely. Courage is not loud. It is quiet, steady, and deliberate. In the end, pressure is not something to defeat. It is something to understand. When understood, it becomes one of your greatest allies in growth. It pushes you to refine your habits, strengthen your focus, and deepen your awareness. It shows you where to train, where to soften, and where to stand firm. So the next time pressure enters your life, do not curse it. Do not run from it. Do not label it as misfortune. Stand still internally. Breathe, observe, and remember. Pressure is not here to break you. It is here to reveal who you are becoming. The breath is always with you, yet most people live as if it does not exist. It moves quietly in the background while the mind races forward, chasing worries, replaying mistakes, and imagining futures that have not arrived. Under pressure, this neglect becomes costly. The moment stress appears, the breath changes. It becomes short, shallow, rushed. And with that change, the mind loses its anchor. What most people call panic is often nothing more than uncontrolled breathing. When pressure enters, the body reacts faster than thought. This is natural. The body is designed to protect you, not to think deeply. It prepares for danger by increasing heart rate, tightening muscles, and speeding the breath. In real physical danger, this response can be useful. But in modern life, pressure often comes from deadlines, expectations, conversations, and decisions, not from threats to survival. Yet the body reacts as if danger is present. If the breath is not controlled, the mind follows the body into alarm. This is why the breath is so powerful. It is the one function that connects the conscious and the unconscious. You cannot directly command your heartbeat to slow down. But when you slow your breath, the heart follows. You cannot directly force the mind to be calm. But when the breath becomes steady, the mind begins to settle. The breath is the steering wheel. Ignore it, and the mind drives wherever stress pulls it. Most people wait for calm before they breathe slowly. This is backwards. Calm is the result, not the starting point. You must breathe first, even when the mind resists, especially when the mind resists. Under pressure, the mind will say, "There is no time to breathe." That thought is the clearest sign that you must breathe. A single slow breath creates a pause. That pause interrupts the automatic reaction. In that interruption, choice returns. Without the pause, you are not choosing, you are reacting. Reaction feels fast, but it is blind. Response may feel slower, but it is precise. The breath is what turns reaction into response. When pressure hits, people often try to solve the problem immediately. They rush toward action, believing speed equals control. But speed without clarity multiplies mistakes. The breath gives clarity first, then speed becomes effective. One calm breath taken before action can save hours of damage control later. The breath also grounds you in the present moment. Pressure often comes from the future, from imagined consequences, feared outcomes, and expectations. The mind leaves the present and creates tension. The breath pulls you back. You cannot breathe in the future or the past. You can only breathe now. By focusing on the breath, you bring the mind out of imagination and into reality. Reality is always more manageable than imagination. The imagined problem is usually larger, more chaotic, and more threatening than the real one. When you breathe deeply and slowly, the mind regains perspective. What felt overwhelming becomes workable. What felt urgent becomes organized. There is also honesty in the breath. You cannot fake it. Your breathing pattern reveals your internal state before you speak a word. Shallow breathing reveals anxiety. Rapid breathing reveals fear. Steady breathing reveals control. By learning to regulate the breath, you regulate the message your body sends to your mind. Under pressure, people often hold their breath without realizing it. This creates internal tension and mental rigidity. Holding the breath is the body's way of bracing, but bracing too long leads to exhaustion. Releasing the breath signals safety. It tells the nervous system that you are not under immediate threat. This message alone can prevent panic from escalating. Breathing slowly is not about becoming passive. It is about becoming available to think clearly, available to listen, available to choose wisely. A calm breath does not weaken your presence, it strengthens it. People feel steadiness before they hear words. Leadership is often communicated through breath and posture more than speech. The breath also teaches patience. You cannot force a breath to be complete instantly. It has its rhythm. When you align with that rhythm, you learn to respect timing. Under pressure, impatience leads to shortcuts. Shortcuts lead to errors. The breath reminds you that completeness matters more than haste. When the breath is shallow, the mind narrows. You see fewer options. You fixate on one outcome. This tunnel vision is dangerous under pressure. Slow, deep breathing expands perception. You see alternatives, you notice details, you hear nuance. Better decisions require wider awareness, and awareness follows the breath. The breath also regulates emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. When breathing is erratic, emotional energy becomes chaotic. When breathing is steady, emotional energy becomes manageable. You do not need to eliminate emotion to make good decisions. You need to contain it. The breath is the container. Many people believe that controlling the breath means forcing it. This creates tension. True control is gentle. It is guiding, not gripping. You lengthen the inhale slightly. You soften the exhale fully. The exhale is especially important. A complete exhale releases tension. It tells the body that the cycle is safe to end. Under pressure, focus more on the exhale than the inhale. Let the breath leave the body completely. This emptiness creates space. Space allows calm to enter naturally. Calm cannot be forced, but it can be invited. Breath control is also about consistency. One slow breath helps. 10 slow breaths transform the state. Regular practice builds familiarity. Familiarity builds confidence. When you have practiced breathing calmly in ordinary moments, you can access it in extraordinary ones. This is why training matters. Do not wait for pressure to learn how to breathe. Learn when life is quiet. Learn when nothing is at stake. Then, when pressure arrives, the body recognizes the pattern. It responds automatically with steadiness rather than panic. The breath also humbles the mind. No matter how intelligent or experienced you are, without the breath, you collapse in minutes. This reminds you that mastery begins with basics. You do not need complex techniques to stay calm. You need awareness of what is already sustaining you. When decisions must be made under pressure, the breath buys you time without delaying action. Time to feel, time to observe, time to choose. Even a few seconds of conscious breathing can separate wisdom from regret. People often regret words spoken under pressure. Those words usually came out while the breath was uncontrolled. Slow breathing, slow speech. It adds weight to words. Silence between sentences becomes possible. Silence often communicates strength more than explanation. The breath also anchors integrity. When you are breathing steadily, you are less likely to compromise values for relief. Panic pushes people to betray principles for comfort. Calm breathing keeps you aligned with what matters. Over time, those who master the breath develop a different relationship with pressure. Pressure no longer hijacks them. It signals them. It reminds them to return to the breath. Each stressful moment becomes a cue for awareness instead of a trigger for chaos. The breath turns pressure into a practice. Every difficult conversation, every high-stakes decision, every moment of uncertainty becomes training. Instead of asking, "How do I escape this?" you ask, "How do I breathe through this?" Breathing through pressure does not mean enduring passively. It means engaging fully without losing yourself. You stay present without becoming overwhelmed. You stay firm without becoming rigid. This balance is rare, and it is built one breath at a time. In moments where everything feels urgent, the breath teaches you that urgency is often internal, not external. When the breath slows, urgency dissolves. What remains is the task itself, clear, neutral, and manageable. Eventually, something subtle but powerful happens. You begin to trust yourself under pressure, not because situations become easier, but because your internal response becomes reliable. You know that no matter what happens, you can return to the breath. And if you can return to the breath, you can return to clarity. This trust creates confidence without arrogance. You are not confident because you control outcomes. You are confident because you control your response. This is unshakable confidence. The breath also teaches surrender without weakness. You surrender tension, not responsibility. You release panic, not action. You accept the moment as it is so you can work with it instead of against it. When you watch someone who is truly calm under pressure, you will notice their breathing before anything else. It is quiet. It is deep. It is unhurried. Their presence stabilizes others. Calm is contagious when it is embodied. In the end, controlling the breath is not about controlling life. It is about controlling access to your best self. Pressure will always exist. Challenges will always come. Decisions will always carry weight. But the breath ensures that when those moments arrive, you meet them with awareness rather than fear. The breath is simple, but it is not small. It is the foundation of composure, clarity, and conscious choice. Master the breath, and you master the doorway to calm. From that calm, better decisions naturally follow. When life pushes you into moments of uncertainty, stress, or conflict, one of the greatest challenges you will ever face is separating your emotions from your decisions. It is not an exaggeration to say that most mistakes, regrets, and lost opportunities occur because emotion is allowed to lead while reason is silenced. Emotion itself is not the enemy, it is a natural signal, a messenger that communicates something about your inner state. The problem arises when emotion becomes the decision maker rather than the advisor. When you confuse feeling with fact, you act impulsively, and the consequences often extend far beyond the moment. Understanding the distinction between feeling and decision is the first step toward mastery, and it is a step few take seriously. Emotions are powerful because they demand attention. Anger, fear, frustration, excitement, and even joy create chemical responses in the body that influence perception. When you are angry, your mind narrows, you see fewer options and exaggerate threats. When you are anxious, your thinking becomes scattered, small problems feel insurmountable. When you are overjoyed, you may underestimate risk, overcommit, or act prematurely. These states are natural, but the moment you allow them to dictate action, you step away from clarity. The challenge is not in feeling emotion, but in controlling whether it drives the choices you make. Feeling deeply is human. Acting blindly because of that feeling is optional. The first principle of separating emotion from decision is awareness. You must recognize the presence of emotion before you make any choice. This is deceptively simple, but it is difficult under pressure because emotion arrives with urgency. It demands immediate attention and tells the mind that action must occur now. The mind, if untrained, listens blindly. You may feel the sting of insult, the panic of a deadline, or the anxiety of a difficult conversation, and immediately act to relieve that feeling. Acting immediately often amplifies the problem instead of solving it. Awareness means noticing the emotion, naming it internally, and acknowledging its presence without judgment. I am feeling anger. I am feeling fear. Simply labeling the emotion creates the first separation. It is a pause, a space between stimulus and response. In that space lies power. The second principle is breathing as a tool to create distance. As emotion rises, the body reacts instinctively. The heart races, the chest tightens, the muscles tense, and the mind short-circuits into impulsive thinking. These physiological responses reinforce emotional intensity. By consciously regulating the breath, you slow the body, and in turn, the mind follows. A deep, controlled breath signals to the nervous system that action does not need to be frantic, that clarity is possible. In the rhythm of the breath, a moment of calm emerges, and with that calm comes the ability to evaluate emotion rather than be dominated by it. This is not theoretical, it is practical. Every second spent in conscious breathing is a second reclaiming authority over choice. The third principle is observing rather than reacting. When anger flares, do not immediately argue or confront. When fear surges, do not immediately withdraw or overcompensate. When disappointment hits, do not immediately blame or overcorrect. Observation is a skill. It requires a quiet mind, a willingness to witness without immediately interfering, and the patience to hold space for the emotion to exist. You may notice that emotions rise and fall naturally, that most of their intensity is temporary. Acting before this natural rhythm has a chance to settle usually leads to decisions that you will later regret. By observing first, you give yourself the opportunity to respond with strategy rather than impulse. The fourth principle is understanding the source of emotion. Emotions are rarely caused solely by external events. They are often magnified by personal expectations, desires, and internal narratives. Anger may be as much about your belief that something should not have happened as about the actual event. Fear may be as much about your imagined outcome as the real situation. When you understand this, you realize that emotion is partially an internal creation, not purely external reality. This awareness weakens the power of emotion over your choices. It reminds you that the mind and body can exaggerate, misinterpret, and overreact. Decisions made with this perspective are grounded in truth rather than the distortion of feeling. The fifth principle is delaying critical choices when possible. Impulsive decisions in the heat of emotion rarely lead to optimal outcomes. If you can, create a buffer between emotional intensity and decision-making. Sleep on it, walk away, journal, or meditate briefly. This delay is not avoidance, it is strategic. Even a few minutes of deliberate separation can transform a decision from reactive to intentional. It is during this interval that perspective emerges, priorities clarify, and reasoning regains strength. The sixth principle is reframing emotion as information. Emotion is valuable because it communicates something essential. Anger can highlight injustice or boundary violations. Fear can highlight risk or preparation gaps. Excitement can highlight opportunity. Joy can highlight alignment with values. The key is to translate emotion into insight, not action. Instead of allowing fear to dictate retreat, let it inform careful planning. Instead of allowing anger to dictate confrontation, let it inform assertive boundaries. By reframing emotion as information, you extract value from it without surrendering control. The seventh principle is anchoring to values and long-term outcomes. Decisions guided by momentary emotion often overlook the bigger picture. Ask yourself, does this choice align with who I aspire to be? Does it serve the outcome I truly desire? When emotion surges, these questions act as a compass. Anchoring to principles rather than feelings provides stability under pressure. It ensures that decisions are consistent, measured, and sustainable. Momentary satisfaction may be sacrificed, but long-term gain is preserved. The eighth principle is cultivating self-compassion. Many people punish themselves for feeling strong emotions, believing that emotion is a weakness. This internal criticism intensifies pressure and reduces clarity. Accept that emotion is human, and do not judge yourself for experiencing it. By embracing your emotional reality without shame, you reduce internal conflict. Reduced conflict leads to clearer thinking, which leads to better decisions. Compassion toward yourself is not indulgence, it is strategic. It is the calm within which sound judgment can operate. The ninth principle is practicing emotional detachment in low stakes moments. Life provides countless small situations where emotion rises unnecessarily. Practice responding calmly in these moments. A disagreement with a friend, a mistake at work, a delay in your schedule. Use these as training grounds. By learning to separate emotion from action in minor scenarios, you build automatic habits that manifest when stakes are higher. Mastery in small matters leads to mastery in critical moments. The 10th principle is understanding consequences. Acting on unchecked emotion often creates chains of events that spiral. One reactive choice can trigger conflict, miscommunication, or lost opportunities. By predicting the likely outcomes of emotionally driven actions, you gain perspective. If acting now feels satisfying but will create complications later, you learn to wait. You learn that patience, though difficult, multiplies the benefits of action. The 11th principle is mental rehearsal. Before stressful events occur, imagine yourself encountering emotional triggers and responding with calm. Visualize anger, fear, and frustration, and see yourself acknowledging the feeling without yielding to it. Rehearsal strengthens the neural pathways required to separate emotion from decision. When the real moment arrives, your mind is prepared and instinct no longer dominates. The 12th principle is surrounding yourself with steady influences. Under pressure, The energy of those around you affects your emotional state. Seek companions, mentors, or environments that promote calm reflection rather than agitation. Steady influence supports your capacity to observe, breathe, and act intentionally. Isolation under emotional intensity magnifies reactions. Community under emotional control strengthens clarity. The 13th principle is integrating reflection after decisions. Even with all tools in place, errors will occur. Emotions may sometimes still influence choices. After action, review the process without judgment. Ask, did I allow emotion to override reason? What can I do next time to maintain separation? Reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without reflection, emotion remains a repeated obstacle rather than a teacher. When all these principles are practiced consistently, a remarkable transformation occurs. The mind stops being reactive. Emotion is experienced fully, yet it no longer hijacks choice. You become a conscious participant in life rather than a passenger of impulses. Decisions become deliberate. Mistakes diminish. Confidence rises because the source of power shifts inward, from fleeting feelings to steady awareness. The sense of control is not over life circumstances, but over your capacity to respond, which is the true power. People often misunderstand the discipline of separating emotion from decision. They imagine suppression or cold detachment. True mastery is neither. It is presence. It is the courage to feel deeply and simultaneously choose wisely. It is an embrace of human nature without surrender to its extremes. It is the calm in the eye of the storm that allows action to be both measured and effective. Under extreme pressure, this skill is priceless. Imagine negotiations, critical business decisions, interpersonal conflict, or emergencies. Those who cannot separate emotion from decision are swept along, reacting and compounding mistakes. Those who can, even in chaotic circumstances, observe, breathe, analyze, and act. They move with purpose, precision, and peace. Their influence extends beyond themselves. Calmness under pressure stabilizes those around them. Leadership is born not from dominance but from presence. Emotional mastery is the gateway to personal authority. Ultimately, separating emotion from decision is a lifelong practice. There is no endpoint where emotions cease to arise. Each moment presents new challenges, new triggers, new intensity. The goal is not emotionless perfection. The goal is conscious engagement with life. Each time you pause, breathe, observe, and act deliberately, you reinforce neural pathways that allow separation to become habitual. You teach the mind that it is not at the mercy of feeling. You cultivate the capacity to respond with clarity, even when the world demands immediacy and reaction. Mastery of this skill is a gift to every area of life. Relationships deepen because responses are thoughtful. Career decisions improve because choices are rational and aligned with purpose. Personal growth accelerates because learning is not clouded by regret or impulsive reactions. Health improves because stress is managed rather than amplified. Confidence expands because internal stability becomes your constant companion. The quiet authority that emerges is subtle but undeniable. People sense it. Life flows differently around those who act from awareness rather than reaction. Emotion is a compass, not a driver. Decisions guided by insight, values, and clarity lead to results that are consistent, sustainable, and meaningful. When you learn to separate emotion from decision, you reclaim power from chaos, convert pressure into opportunity, and transform the ordinary moments of life into a practice of mastery. Every emotion you feel becomes a teacher, every challenge becomes a rehearsal, and every choice becomes a deliberate expression of who you are becoming. Mastery is not the absence of emotion, it is the conscious use of it to guide action rather than dictate it. Life is full of things that pull at your attention, that demand a reaction, that create tension and worry. Every day, from the moment you wake, the world presents circumstances, events, and people over which you have little or no control. The weather changes, traffic slows, others speak harshly, opportunities come and go, and outcomes often depend on countless factors beyond your influence. Many people allow themselves to be consumed by these forces, constantly fighting the unchangeable, constantly worrying about what they cannot alter. Yet his struggle is the source of most stress, most anxiety, and most wasted energy. The key to calmness, clarity, and effective decision-making is learning to focus only on what is within your control and letting go of the rest. This principle is simple in theory, but powerful in practice, and it is a skill that transforms how you live, how you respond, and how you grow. When you focus on what is outside of your control, your mind becomes scattered. You imagine outcomes, you predict disasters, you replay scenarios that may never occur. This mental activity feels urgent, but it is largely meaningless. Energy is spent on illusions. Fear grows because you attempt to manage what cannot be managed. Anger rises because events do not align with expectations. Worry multiplies because control is sought where none exists. It is a trap. The more you try to grasp the uncontrollable, the further your center slips. The mind becomes reactive, and decisions made from that state are weak, erratic, and often regretful. The first step in focusing on what is within your control is awareness. You must recognize the difference between internal and external forces. Internal forces include your thoughts, your words, your actions, your discipline, your choices, and your responses. External forces include the behavior of others, the opinions of the world, the passage of time, natural events, and circumstances that are beyond your influence. This distinction is fundamental. Internal forces are the domain of true power. External forces are the realm of observation, not control. Recognizing this difference creates the first separation between energy wasted and energy preserved. Once you recognize this distinction, the next step is intentional attention. Energy is the currency of life. Where attention goes, energy flows. If you focus on what cannot be changed, your energy is scattered. If you focus on what can be influenced, your energy is concentrated, deliberate, and potent. Concentrated energy produces clarity, action, and results. Scattered energy produces confusion, indecision, and exhaustion. This principle is why the mind of a person under pressure can either collapse or flourish. Those who know where to focus create leverage over the moment. Those who do not are overwhelmed by it. One of the most important lessons in this practice is the acceptance of uncertainty. External events are inherently uncertain. No matter how much planning you do, outcomes will always include variables beyond your control. Accepting this fact does not mean passivity, it means realism. Acceptance reduces internal conflict. It prevents the mind from struggling against what is unchangeable. This is the source of calm. When you no longer fight the uncontrollable, the mind finds its natural center, and clear thinking becomes possible. Focusing on what is within your control also strengthens discipline. When the mind knows it can influence itself, it directs effort efficiently. Instead of wasting energy on external validation, luck, or timing, you invest in skill, preparation, habit, and consistency. These are internal forces that yield predictable results. They build resilience because you learn that progress does not depend on circumstances, but on your own effort. Even in chaos, you can act. Even when others fail, you can maintain integrity. Control over yourself is the foundation for all other forms of effectiveness. This principle applies to emotion as well. Emotional reactions are often triggered by external events, but the intensity, duration, and expression of those reactions are within your control. You cannot always control what others say or do, but you can control your response. Anger, fear, frustration, or disappointment can arise, but you decide whether to act impulsively, retreat, speak calmly, or remain silent. Those who focus on external provocations are at the mercy of others. Those who focus on internal regulation remain steady, resilient, and able to act with clarity. An essential element of this mindset is deliberate action. Once you identify what is within your control, you must act. Awareness alone is insufficient. Control is not passive, it requires conscious engagement. If a task can be done, do it. If your effort can influence a situation, apply it. If your attitude can shift perspective, choose it. Every small action you take within your domain of influence accumulates into greater mastery over your life. Inaction, even when the uncontrollable label seems overwhelming, leads to stagnation and anxiety. Action is the expression of internal power. This focus also requires discipline in thought. The mind is naturally drawn to worry over the uncontrollable. It imagines worst-case scenarios, replays mistakes, and debates outcomes endlessly. Each of these mental habits drains energy. You must train the mind to notice when it is wandering into the realm of the uncontrollable and gently redirect it toward what you can influence. This training takes repetition, patience, and consistency. It is like strengthening a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger and more automatic the focus becomes. Another dimension is the recognition of influence versus control. Some external events can be influenced but not controlled. For example, you cannot control the opinions of others, but you can influence them through your words, behavior, and consistency. You cannot control a team's performance entirely, but you can influence it through leadership, preparation, and example. Understanding the difference prevents frustration. You invest effort where it matters and accept what cannot be forced. Influence is the bridge between internal control and external reality. It allows action without attachment to absolute outcomes. The power of focusing on what is within your control is most evident in times of crisis. When chaos surrounds you, the mind often panics, seeking to fix everything simultaneously. Those who have trained themselves to focus internally act differently. They survey the situation calmly, identify what they can affect, and begin there. Small, deliberate steps build momentum. Each action expands clarity and reduces overwhelm. Control over self becomes leverage in the uncontrollable environment. Chaos is not eliminated, but mastery of response transforms it into opportunity. This principle also fosters resilience. Life will present setbacks, failures, and disappointments. Those who invest energy in controlling external factors only feel powerless when circumstances change. Those who invest in their own effort, judgment, and discipline find that setbacks do not dictate identity or direction. Internal control creates stability. It is the anchor that prevents storms from capsizing the mind. Resilience is not built by avoiding challenges, but by learning to focus on where you can make a difference. Focusing on what is within your control enhances clarity in decision-making. Decisions often fail because the mind is distracted by variables it cannot manage. By eliminating the noise of the uncontrollable, you see clearly the choices that matter. Options become visible, priorities become evident, and the path forward emerges with simplicity. Clarity emerges from reducing the mental clutter that comes from futile attempts to manage the uncontrollable. This principle also strengthens patience. External events rarely align perfectly with desire. If your focus is on outcomes rather than effort, impatience grows. If your focus is on effort, preparation, and action, the things you can control, patience naturally develops. You learn to move steadily, to wait for results without frustration, and to act consistently without anxiety. Patience is the companion of control. It allows steady progress even when circumstances resist. Applying this principle improves relationships. Conflict often arises from attempts to control others, to change them according to desire. By focusing on your own behavior, words, and attitudes, you reduce friction. You act with integrity, respond calmly, and communicate with clarity. Others may still act unpredictably, but your own steadiness stabilizes the dynamic. You influence without forcing. you lead without coercion, and you maintain peace within yourself. Another benefit is freedom. Most people live under the illusion that control is found externally, over others, over circumstances, over recognition, over fate. This illusion creates anxiety because external control is unattainable. Focusing on internal control liberates the mind. You realize that your power is not measured by events around you, but by your response to them. This realization removes the burden of trying to manipulate what is unchangeable, creating mental and emotional freedom. Focusing on what is within your control also builds confidence. Confidence is often mistaken for the absence of difficulty. True confidence, however, comes from knowing that no matter the situation, you can act with integrity, clarity, and effectiveness. You cannot predict outcomes, but you can predict your effort, your preparation, and your response. This certainty in what you can control forms an unshakable foundation for action. The principle extends to long-term goals as well. Life is unpredictable. Plans will be disrupted. People may betray trust. Opportunities may vanish. When energy is wasted on external unpredictability, progress falters. When energy is invested in consistent effort, skill development, strategic planning, and disciplined habits, the things within your control, momentum builds regardless of obstacles. Long-term results are the accumulation of controlled actions, not controlled circumstances. Finally, this principle is empowering because it is actionable immediately. Every day, every moment, choices arise. You can choose where your attention flows, where your energy is invested, and how you respond. By consciously deciding to focus on what is within your control, you transform pressure into action, chaos into opportunity, and uncertainty into growth. Life will continue to throw challenges, but mastery is measured not by the world's predictability, but by your steadiness in it. Those who practice this consistently become magnets for stability, clarity, and influence. They are not unaffected by difficulty, but they are unshaken by it. They act decisively where they can, release what they cannot, and remain centered through turbulence. They experience less regret, less frustration, and greater fulfillment because energy is spent wisely. Control over self becomes the source of power that no external circumstance can diminish. In essence, focusing only on what is within your control is the ultimate act of wisdom and strength. It aligns your effort with reality, directs your energy efficiently, cultivates calm under pressure, and produces results that are sustainable. Life will always be unpredictable. People will always act in unexpected ways, and circumstances will always challenge desire. What you control, your mind, your effort, your choices, your responses, is where mastery is possible. When you focus there, pressure becomes manageable, decisions become clear, and life moves with intention rather than reaction. This is the foundation of inner power, the anchor of resilience, and the path to a life of deliberate, steady progress. Calmness is not something that happens by accident. It is not a gift bestowed only upon the lucky or naturally serene. Calmness is a skill, a discipline, a muscle of the mind that must be trained before life tests it in moments of pressure. Most people wait until chaos surrounds them, until deadlines press, until conflict erupts, until fear and panic rise, and only then do they wish they were calm. By that time, it is too late. Calmness cannot be summoned in the heat of reaction if it has not been cultivated in advance. This is why the practice of calmness before it is needed is one of the most important for RMs of preparation for life. It is invisible, quiet, and subtle, yet it determines the difference between collapse and mastery, confusion and clarity, regret and wisdom. Training calmness begins with awareness. The first step is to observe the mind without judgment, to notice its tendencies, its habitual reactions, and the speed with which it moves from thought to emotion to reaction. Most people live unconsciously, letting the mind be carried by impulses, desires, and fears. They do not notice how quickly a small inconvenience can turn into irritation, how a minor disagreement can escalate into conflict, how a small worry can snowball into anxiety. Calmness begins when you notice these patterns before they control you. Awareness is the soil in which the seeds of calmness are planted. Without awareness, training is impossible because you cannot correct what you do not recognize. Once awareness exists, the next step is intentional practice in small, everyday moments. Calmness is not trained only in dramatic situations, it is built in ordinary life. When the traffic is heavy, do not let irritation rise. When someone interrupts you, do not let impatience dictate your response. When plans change unexpectedly, do not allow frustration to take hold. Each of these small moments is an opportunity to exercise calmness. The stakes may seem minor, but the habit created is powerful. Calmness in small matters transfers to calmness in larger, high-pressure circumstances. Breathing is a fundamental tool for training calmness. The breath is always with you, yet it is most powerful when consciously used. By learning to slow and deepen the breath in low-stakes situations, you prepare your nervous system to respond calmly in moments of high stress. A single deep, controlled breath signals to the mind and body that panic is not required. When practiced regularly, the body begins to recognize this pattern. Under pressure, it will automatically settle, allowing the mind to think clearly rather than react blindly. Breathing is a bridge between awareness and action, between observation and response, and it is the foundation of practiced calmness. Another crucial aspect of training calmness is mindfulness of the present moment. The mind under pressure often projects into the past or the future. It regrets mistakes that cannot be changed and worries about outcomes that cannot be predicted. Training calmness involves bringing attention back to what is present, to what can be acted upon here and now. This practice may take the form of meditation, reflection, or simply pausing during the day to notice the sensations of life, the feel of the body, the sound of the environment, the rhythm of thought. When the mind becomes accustomed to returning to the present, it becomes less reactive, less scattered, and more composed under pressure. Calmness is also trained through deliberate exposure to manageable stress. Life does not prepare us through comfort alone. You must learn to face minor challenges intentionally and maintain composure. For example, deliberately placing yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations, a difficult conversation, a physical challenge, a timed task, creates practice opportunities. The mind and body learn that stress does not have to lead to chaos. Each successful exercise builds confidence. Each small victory over reaction reinforces the internal habit of calmness. This is how readiness is created before the storm arrives. Visualization is a powerful tool in training calmness before it is needed. Imagine a high-pressure situation, a presentation, a confrontation, a sudden crisis, and picture yourself responding with complete composure. See the body steady, the breath controlled, the mind clear. Imagine making decisions calmly, speaking with precision, and handling challenges without panic. Visualization strengthens the neural pathways associated with calm response. When the real moment arrives, the mind is familiar with the state of composed action. The body remembers the rehearsal, and the nervous system reacts with steadiness instead of alarm. Training calmness also involves controlling the internal dialogue. Most minds under pressure are dominated by fear-driven or self-critical thoughts. I cannot handle this. This is too much. If I fail, it will be disastrous. These thoughts amplify stress and erode calmness. Regular practice involves noticing these thoughts and replacing them with neutral or constructive ones. I can respond steadily. I have handled challenges before. I will focus on what I can control. By training the mind in ordinary situations to respond to internal chatter with steadiness, you prepare it to remain composed when true pressure arrives. Discipline in daily routines is another form of calmness training. When your life is structured, when habits are consistent, when tasks are completed with focus, when rest and nutrition are maintained, the mind and body develop a baseline of stability. This baseline is critical in moments of pressure. If daily life is chaotic, the mind is already unsteady. and high-pressure moments will amplify instability. Discipline in small daily acts reinforces calmness. The consistency of effort translates directly to resilience. Calmness is not just emotional, it is physiological, and routine cultivates that steadiness. Reflection is a key component of training calmness. After experiencing tension or minor stress, take time to review your response. Ask yourself, did I maintain composure? Where did emotion overtake reason? How could I respond more effectively next time? Reflection creates feedback loops that accelerate learning. By reviewing even ordinary reactions, you create conscious awareness of patterns, and this awareness allows the mind to adapt and improve. Calmness becomes a practiced, intentional skill rather than a fleeting state. Another essential principle is detachment from outcomes. Calmness is reinforced when the mind stops attaching self-worth or identity to results. Pressure is magnified when outcomes feel critical or when the stakes are personal. Training calmness involves practicing action without attachment to specific results. Focus on effort, strategy, and principle. Celebrate action, not immediate success. When the mind values integrity of effort above external reward, calmness becomes accessible even in situations of uncertainty. Training calmness also benefits from exposure to natural rhythms and environments. Observing nature, the slow growth of trees, the steady flow of water, the rhythm of the wind teaches the mind the value of patience and constancy. These lessons are subtle but deeply effective. Regular contact with natural calmness primes the nervous system, creating familiarity with stillness. In moments of high stress, the body and mind recall these patterns, and composure is more easily accessed. The principle extends to emotional regulation. Daily training in calmness involves noticing emotional fluctuations and choosing response rather than reaction. When irritation, frustration, or fear arises in small, everyday circumstances, practice responding without escalation. Speak deliberately, pause before action, observe internal states. These micro-practices develop the skill that would be critical when stakes are high. Emotional self-regulation is a muscle. It must be exercised company. Insistently to respond effectively in moments of real pressure. Time management and preparation are additional tools in cultivating calmness. Stress often arises when the mind feels rushed or unprepared. By training yourself to plan, prioritize, and prepare in ordinary life, you reduce unnecessary pressure. Preparation alone is not calmness, but it is a foundation. When you have a plan and a clear understanding of what can be controlled, the mind has fewer distractions, fewer imagined crises, and more space to remain steady. Calmness is both an internal state and a product of deliberate external organization. Community and mentorship also accelerate calmness training. Observing, learning from, and interacting with those who model composure in pressure teaches implicit skills that cannot be acquired through theory alone. Listening to steady voices, noting their pacing, observing their reactions, and emulating their approach builds neural patterns of calmness. Immersing oneself in an environment where composure is normalized creates familiarity and confidence that can be drawn upon in personal moments of stress. The practice of journaling is a subtle but powerful form of calmness training. Writing down thoughts, reactions, and emotional patterns allows the mind to externalize pressure. It provides clarity on habitual responses, illuminates triggers, and offers an opportunity to reflect on progress. Over time, journaling reveals growth, patterns of success, and areas requiring additional attention. Calmness is cultivated in awareness, and journaling is a tool that fosters that awareness systematically. Physical training is another complementary form of calmness preparation. Discipline in movement, whether through martial arts, yoga, running, or strength training, teaches the body to tolerate discomfort, regulate energy, and maintain control under physical stress. The lessons of patience, effort, and internal focus carry over directly to mental composure. Physical steadiness translates to emotional steadiness, and the mind learns to remain centered even under external pressure. Resilience in low-stakes challenges builds a foundation for high-pressure calmness. Every moment that tests your patience, every minor setback, every inconvenience is an opportunity to practice response without panic. When this is done intentionally, the mind grows accustomed to challenge. By the time truly high-pressure moments arrive, calmness is not learned in the crisis, it is drawn from a history of repeated, deliberate practice. The mind, body, and nervous system recognize the state of composure as familiar and safe. Consistency is the ultimate key. Calmness is not a one-time achievement, but a daily practice. Even 10 minutes of deliberate focus each day. Breathing, exercises, mindfulness, reflection, journaling, physical discipline builds neural and physiological patterns that support composure. Each small repeated effort compounds. The mind, body, and spirit internally. The calmness long before life forces you to draw upon it. When crisis comes, calmness is not something you hope for. It is something you enact naturally. Training calmness before it is needed is the difference between reaction and mastery. Most people approach life hoping that composure will appear when they need it. Those who train know it will not appear by chance. They cultivate it in ordinary moments, in daily habits, in deliberate exercises of awareness, breath, patience, reflection, preparation, and exposure to challenge. Calmness becomes second nature. When the storm hits, their mind does not scatter, their body does not tense, their decisions do not falter. Calmness is their default state. It is invisible to observers, but its effects are profound. Actions are deliberate, words are measured, and presence alone stabilizes the environment. In essence, calmness is preparation, practice, and patience. It is the art of being ready internally, so that when external chaos arrives, the mind is not caught off guard. It is the cultivation of steadiness in advance, the building of a reservoir of composure, and the training of response before pressure demands it. Those who understand this principle act with clarity in the most difficult moments, make decisions from a place of strength rather than reaction, and move through life with quiet, unwavering confidence. Calmness is not accidental. It is trained, practiced, and lived before it is ever required. And in this preparation lie true power. Pressure will come, that is guaranteed, but whether it controls you or strengthens you is your choice. Train your mind, master your breath, stay calm, and let your decisions shape a powerful life.